Hello and welcome to episode 247 of Sutton and Back Family Style. I'm Jason.
I'm Bill, and I'm starting us off with something we never talk about, or rarely talk about on the show. I
All
think
right.
Jason might have talked about it before. But I'm going to talk about the Lioness Nunez losing in the UFC bout, which is something I never thought would happen. I mean, I thought this person is like the Mike Tyson of UFC, and she lost. And I watched the highlights, and I was blown away. It was when there's those lower weights, they're really a lot of action and a lot of mayhem and violence. But I was surprised.
Yeah. It's surprising, and then
Another
you
thing
also
I watched
you have everybody's.
three of the four women's volleyball matches yesterday, which are always good. I'm just astounded by the size of these girls playing. I mean, like all the lines are 6'4" to 6'7".
Yeah. Well, we have a family member that was a volleyball player, but she's 6'4", right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh, she's 6'4". She's 6'2", 6'3", anyhow. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it was great, and I rooted for Pitt, and Pitt won. So Pitt made the final four for the first time ever, and they'll be playing Nebraska. And the other match is Louisville, who has not lost all year long. Will be playing. I'm trying to think who they're going to play. Wisconsin. So two good matchups on Thursday, and then the finals on Saturday. So a little non-traditional stuff for Sutton Impact Family Style, but I thought I was watching those things and I was interested.
Yeah. I think back to the UFC. I mean, obviously, whether you're talking about UFC or boxing, like eventually everybody goes down. That's just the way that it works. But also, I think when you look at, if you look at like the history of men's UFC,
Mm-hmm.
early on you had all these very dominant guys, and then once people caught up to the training and people understood, like it leveled out quite a bit. And I think the women's was a little bit behind it. It wasn't as mainstream or as accepted having women compete. But,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think now like some people are catching up to like the Nunez and people of the world where it's like now they've had, they're not coming in as like somebody that was a 25-year-old judo person going into it. Now you have people that are training in it for decades, ready to go. And I
Yeah,
think every
so
now and again, I
I
think
mean they are. It is. It's technique, and you get as innovations come along and different training techniques, and people see success, they copy that and they invest in it. As long as you have the syndicate behind you that can afford to give you that kind of training and that kind of access to rehab and other things, you can make quick gains in that business.
I always thought Tiger sort of reset golf. I mean, if you look at the average
He did.
body of a
I agree
golfer
with that.
before he got there, I mean, not just the fact that, he was playing golf from three on Johnny Carson or whatever show he was on, but like, he brought a mindset of diet and physicality, and like the gym and the workouts that other golfers just, I mean, clearly weren't doing before him.
No, no, and some still aren't doing it, like beef.
Yeah, some still aren't doing it, but I mean, it sort of reset what a professional golfer was. It brought them into, physically speaking, it made them sound more like athletes than, your weekend golfer guy. And I think that just happens in lots of sports where it just sort of, oh, this is the new standard, and I have to catch up to the standard.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it is. Somebody always comes along to revolutionize it. Like, you know, Tom Brady has revolutionized longevity in sport, and but I just don't think there's, what he does. How many people would be willing to do that? That's what it comes down to. Like the stuff that Tiger did, you could be willing to do that
Yeah.
because there's not. I mean, it's a regimen and it's demanding, but I wouldn't call it sacrifice. Where I'd call the Tom Brady stuff sacrifice. And really, living it 24/7. And I just don't see a lot of people willing to do that.
No. But I mean, I've seen from, Giselle is also like, his spouse, his partner is part of his, and his family follows that same sort of, we go to bed at 8 o'clock at night. Our treat is avocado ice cream. We don't eat tomatoes. I mean, like they're, again, it's hard to argue with the results, but yeah, that's,
Yeah. I mean, he's thrown for 86,000 yards. So they had a stat in this game today. He set the record for, most wins, most completions, most yards, It's unbelievable. I mean, what he's done. He's at 86,000. If you told me if there was a bet in Vegas that had Tom Brady and passing for 100,000 yards, I think I'd bet on it. I mean, I'm watching them now. They're killing Buffalo. It's 24-3 in the third quarter. And, I mean, they can't get to him. And he just is executing everything. I mean, if anything, I think he's better than he ever was.
Yeah, and we can sort of transition to our football moment with this, but, here's our Steeler moment. The Steelers came off a thrilling game, I suppose. But when you watch Roethlisberger, he has moments where he looks like he can still play the game of football.
Yes, but he has moments where he looks 49 instead of 39.
Whereas Tom Brady, he looks 33. I don't know.
23 sometimes.
Yeah, like the zip on the arm, the accuracy. He's getting the ball where it needs to go. I mean, and he's always gone down very easy in the pocket. Like, he was never a guy that, like Big Ben, that would shake things off. But yeah, and I guess while we're on the subject of Brady too, I think it's hard to argue there isn't, like when you talk the NBA and people bring up Jordan, they immediately talk about LeBron. And then the old heads obviously bring up Russell with his 12 rings that he just auctioned off for charity. And you can bring other guys into that conversation. I feel like with Brady, it's being very hard to put anybody in the conversation.
I agree.
I mean, as great as Jerry Rice, and Lawrence Taylor and Jim Brown and some of these other guys were, not that they aren't all-timers. Like, it's hard to say that, that anybody is on Brady's level. And I think every other sport you can, Tiger, Jack.
Yeah, I think he's. I'd have to say he's peerless right now. I agree with you.
And that's a crazy spot to be in, especially in an argument culture with Twitter and everything else. Like, it's just.
Yeah. But I mean, anybody you bring up, you could bring up Joe Montana, you could bring up Bradshaw, the guys that won 4 Super Bowls, but they didn't play as long and they weren't successful in all the years they played, and they weren't in that many Super Bowls. And, they had other things around them. Whereas he just, you could argue he's played with less name talent than anybody.
Yeah.
And still been successful.
And when you look at, the other guys that won multiple, like Bradshaw and Montana, they basically won with those same group of Hall of Famers all around them. And Brady's done it with, like you said, 2 different teams now, and, random receivers and random running backs. You just go down the list. Like, it's crazy.
Well, I'm going to sit here and tell you that I'm really looking forward to the NFC playoffs with Green Bay, Arizona, and Tampa. I mean, those are 3 really, really good teams. And I'll be curious to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, I think when we look at the NFC, I think you mentioned the only 3 teams, or the only teams I see coming out of it. I can't buy into the Rams or the Cowboys.
Too
inconsistent. I mean, you look at the second place team in the NFC South, it's somehow the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah.
The Minnesota Vikings at 6-7 are the second place in the NFC North. And Dallas struggled to beat the 6-7 Washington Redskins, or Washington National Professional Football Team today.
Yeah. So, I mean, those 3 teams look like the class, and then, it's New England.
And Kansas City.
And that's probably it.
I mean, Tennessee is 9-4 right now.
And Indianapolis is interesting.
But they've lost.
Tennessee's interesting.
Yeah.
But they're not. They're definitely a step below the other 2.
If Tennessee had a healthy Derrick Henry and a healthy A.J. Brown coming into the playoffs.
Oh, they'd be a totally different team.
Totally different team. But the Bills look like. I mean, right now, and this goes back to our prediction at the beginning of the year, which makes us look kind of good. The Dolphins are only a game back behind the Bills, and they're playing pretty good football right now.
Yeah.
The wacky AFC North. Ravens are 8-5. Bengals 7-5. Browns 6-7-6. Steelers 6-6-1. And I don't see any of those teams making any noise in the playoffs.
No, I don't either.
And then, like you said, Indianapolis has lost 6 games, and they're in division with the 2-11 Jacksonville and 2-11 Houston. And then you got the weird Chargers and the weird Broncos and the weird Raiders. So I just,
Yeah, the Chargers are probably the one team that I just don't understand. I mean, they either look like a world beater or the worst. There's no middle ground with that team.
no. And speaking of teams that we just lost to that are bizarre anomalies, when you look at Thielen, Jefferson, Cook, some of the play, Harrison Smith, Kendricks on defense, like, it's amazing the Minnesota Vikings are as mediocre as they are.
Absolutely. And talking about our fantasy team, do you realize when action started today, we were already down 35-0 just because of Dalvin Cook the other night?
Yeah. That was a weird play for the Steelers. Not that he listens to our show, but, Chase Claypool had a very rough week for our Steeler moment. And I guess that, we talked about it a little bit offline, but when he did it in the moment, after already getting the stupid first down penalty for putting his finger in the guy's face in the first half that cost him yards.
Yeah.
If he had just come out and did the full mea culpa, I would have felt okay. But blaming other people and still admitting that celebrating the first down with Klein running out and your team down, it just it didn't even cross his mind that was wrong.
No, and that's the sad part.
And then the other thing that's been making the rounds, and it seems going back and forth, but now people are like, you had Antonio, you had Juju, you technically had some Le'Veon Bell stuff in there, you had LeGarrette Blount, now you've got Chase Claypool. Like, is there something fundamentally wrong in the Steelers locker room that, this sort of me first attitude is happening,
It's a good point.
Because I understand, and I know as, someone that's been in charge of, groups of people throughout my career, like, on the one hand, you like to think, if things are getting done and we're being successful, then I don't need to, then I can be a little loose. I can, even though I don't really like what's happening over here, they're getting their job done, so I'm just kind of let it go.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, that inevitably rears its head up, And, on a film set, you can be the director. That's the one time you lose your shit. Everybody's like, oh my God, we made that guy angry. Let's get our stuff together. We calm down. And again, it's a 2-month, 3-month job. Whereas this is a culture thing now that's been happening, for well over a decade with some,
Yeah.
And then you get the players that, the disgruntled players that ask out and the Steelers let them out. And you got to wonder if there's, besides obviously, need of a rebuild, that maybe the rebuild's got to be a little bigger than we think.
And more of a rebuild.
Yeah.
A breakdown and then a rebuild.
And I think that
things that happened today, Josh Gordon scored a touchdown today.
He did. And more importantly, if you're, an anti-New England person or you just want to see good football, like, it's nice to see Kansas City's offense at least come to life a little bit today.
Yeah.
Although they've been so bad all year, it's hard to say. So I feel like we're kind of on the same page football-wise.
Yeah, it just, it's been interesting. But the teams that are the best are rising. They're like Arizona. Look how many they won all their games without Kyler Murray.
Which is crazy.
And that's so tomorrow night I'm looking forward to watching him play and see what they're able to do.
They're the one team that, they're the only team with less than 4 losses, and they only have 2 losses. They've, like you said, they've continued to win with Colt McCoy as their quarterback when Kyler Murray, their best player, has been out. And I still haven't been able to buy into them yet.
No.
And I don't know if that's because, we've heard bad story, people make fun of Cliff Kingsbury and, they're Arizona and they're not a traditional football powerhouse, but it does seem like they've got a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. And, at this point, it's either...
Since we're talking about Arizona...
Yeah.
Let me segue for a minute to the to the Phoenix Coyotes,
Oh,
who were going to get thrown out of their building because they hadn't paid their rent or their taxes.
yeah.
And they've already, Glendale, Arizona has already said that they're not going to renew their lease
No.
because they can figure they can make more money with concerts and other things. And I've thought I guarantee it's got to be 8 years. That it makes no sense to have that team in that market.
None.
Absolutely none. People don't go, and when they do go, they wear their other jersey. Yeah, like if they played the Blackhawks every game, they'd be very financially successful because all the ex-Chicago people live out there. But it makes no sense. And I actually thought that team was going to be in Seattle. So now I'm going to have to think that they're going to be in Houston because I don't believe there's any credibility that team stays there.
No.
It makes no business sense.
I
And
think
that's, you don't talk about it. It makes no business sense at all.
I think it's also very tough for a sport like hockey, which is typically a, obviously Canadian northern sport that requires ice. It's difficult to gain a foothold when nobody's ever played it growing up in your local fan base.
Although I would give you the Lightning as a real contrarian example.
I know, but at least you get the snowbirds that have all moved down there and have, retired from New York and Jersey and all those places.
You get snowbirds from Minnesota and Illinois and Arizona. But what you don't have in Arizona is an owner that put money in high school hockey, built hockey rinks for kids to play, and started youth hockey programs. And that's why it's successful in Tampa and it's not in Arizona.
That's an excellent.
You got to create a market. You got to build a market. And the way you build a market is exactly what you said. You got to teach kids to play and enjoy the game, and then want to be part of it.
Yeah, it makes total sense, and it always seems like it. I think this is one of the problems we have. Generally in American businesses, it's everything is short term money. It's we can continue to cut this semester and we cut this quarter. Makes our share go up. We look good on the stock market, API, all that kind of stuff. But it's like it's not a good long-term investment, both from a company standpoint. It just eventually you've got to invest all through the bottom to pay off at the top. I think we got some trades coming in the NBA, Dad. Maybe.
Yeah, I've been watching, the Ben Simmons thing and just waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. And I keep waiting for somebody to pull the trigger. And, we all know that it's going to have to be value for value or problem for problem. But it's got to fit in the cap this time of year. So, it's got to be multiple, maybe it involves multiple teams, but I thought that would happen. It looks like Dame Lillard is a possibility. It looks like McCollum's a possibility. And, as I said to you offline, I'm starting to think that Zion's played it. Maybe Zion's trying to play his way out of New Orleans.
I'm going to bring up a name when I think of Zion, and I hope this does not happen to his career. But he reminds me very much of one Jared Lorenzen, the hefty lefty, who is a Super Bowl ring hurler. But when you hear stories about him down here, about how his favorite meal is an entire pizza and regular soda, and again, I think it's a problem in America. It's not just, Zion or Jared Lorenzen, but I think he has some real food issues. And
New Orleans is a bad place to have a food issue.
It is. Everywhere. If you like, if your late night meal is pizza and a giant soda and you're eating the entire, just in general, you're not going to be in great shape. And if you're eating the entire pizza, then, But supposedly he's somewhere between 310 and 330 pounds. And, on those knees.
He's got a foot problem, and that's not a lot of weight. It's too much weight to put on a foot.
It's too much weight. And Jared Lorenzen, he was great at Kentucky. Was technically on the Giants when they won a Super Bowl. But, he has a wonderful article and a special about him, too, where he talks about just he could not stop eating, And he said he would go on the way home and he would stop and buy like 2 boxes of Hostess and eat the entire 2 boxes. And just that, he sort of had that insatiable need to just continue to eat. And he kept eating bad food. And it was somewhat about feelings and there was some other stuff involved. But, and the other thing they said is that he just hired a trainer just now. Uh, Zion.
Lorenzen or Zion?
Zion. I
Yeah.
just, like I said, I mean, when you get a big guy with foot and knee problems, which he's had both of now,
Yeah.
never finished the season healthy, and apparently he's got some food. And again, you're trying to be as sensitive as possible when we talk about food issues, because I know that, you know, but I think at some point we have to be able to have a conversation about healthy eating as opposed to, you know, making fun of somebody's weight. Like, you should never
Yeah,
make
I
fun of
agree.
somebody where they are, but we have to at least get a, you know, we have a lot of incredibly unhealthy eating habits in the American population that need to be addressed on some level.
Well, when I think of Zion, I think of Greg Odom. I mean, Greg Odom looked like he was going to be a world beater coming out of Ohio State, and
But
he had foot injuries, and that was it.
but that dude was chiseled.
He was chiseled, but that's what I'm saying. The foot injury is the
Yeah.
thing. When your feet go,
Yao Ming.
you're that big, and you're playing a game that's violent on your feet like basketball. You've got to make concessions in other places, just like you're saying.
And it seems like, and I know the foot has an incredible amount of bones and everything else in it, but like, as far as we've come with knees, you know, going back to Bill Walton, Yao Ming, like the foot issue, like the feet don't seem to heal the same way ever.
No, and I mean, I know they do ankle replacements now, but I don't know if you can have an ankle replacement and be a professional basketball player. I know you could be a weekend warrior and have an ankle replacement and go play golf and things like that, but I don't know how an ankle replacement stands up. I mean, a knee replacement, there's no professional athletes with a knee replacement.
No, no, I don't think so. I don't even think there's any sports entertainers with knee replacements that are actually doing anything in the ring
Yeah.
in a choreographed sort of way. But when we talk about, you know, Simmons, Dame, and even Kyrie's name has popped up from time to time. If I was an opposing GM, unless I was, and I'm even trying to think of a good example of a team, maybe a Sacramento. Um, so
A Sacramento, another team that could just tear it down and start over.
but also like, because like I said, I look at those guys and I'm like, I haven't liked anything I've really seen from. I know he plays great defense, but between the way he played at LSU in college and his in it, not just, and again, I don't care that he can't shoot, but the fact that he won't shoot and he's passing up layups and it seems like he's regressed. I don't know what I'd want to give up for Ben Simmons. Like if I'm a good team, I don't want to mortgage my future for Ben Simmons.
True.
I don't want to do that for Kyrie. And even as much as I love Dame, and it, you know, I know Stephen A. is on the radio every day talking about Dame to the Knicks, and that would certainly be exciting. I mean, he is a small guard over 30, and the history of small guards over 30s isn't great either.
Yeah. But he's probably the best bet. If you're going to bet on somebody be able to come in and move your team forward, I would take him over the other two alternatives we just talked about.
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, Kyrie's the most talented given his age and his ability, but he's the biggest wild card of anybody in a long time.
No, he's got too many issues. You get too many off the court issues that affect on the court issues.
Yeah.
And Ben Simmons is, probably needs counseling and he needs development and he's been damaged. And, can he ever come back? Who knows?
I mean,
He's not the kind of guy you want to go throwing $30 million at.
no. And if I was Portland and I could give you C.J. McCollum, maybe one pick and a swap down the road, then I'd probably pull the trigger. But I'm not giving you anything else than that. You know, maybe I'll throw in Anthony Simons, but you're not getting multiple pick swaps. And then it also comes down
I
to
saw the one thing that it was like 7 years worth of picks
yeah.
that somebody had laid out. And I thought, there's no way.
The only guy on their team worth that's Embiid, and you're not trading Embiid.
No.
And then I guess the wild card trade team is obviously the Celtics, because they are once again sitting at 13 and 14 in the 10th spot right now, with two excellent players that it just doesn't seem like whatever's happening there isn't working. I know we talked about that a little bit, but I don't know what you do in that situation.
You got to be committed to making a change. And if you're not, you stand pat and you keep hoping it's going to get better. but it might be one of those things that you got to take a step backwards, fix your issues, and then move forward.
And then I guess the last NBA trade talk I'll throw in there for you is, and this is a weird one. Like obviously the Pacers are looking to either get rid of Sabonis or Miles Turner, both really good players, but they just don't fit together. But somehow the Lakers are in discussions for Miles Turner. And I have no idea what the Lakers could possibly give up for Miles Turner.
Or how they could take some other salary on.
Or how they could take some other salary on. And then I guess while we're on the Lakers, we have to have our Laker minute to get the ratings up, right?
Yes.
Have you seen... People have been also, speaking of killing certain players, like Anthony Davis has taken a lot of heat this week.
Yeah, it seems like they moved on from Russ, then to LeBron, now to AD.
And I think
all three of those guys have gotten massacred this year.
They have. And Frank Vogel's taken a lot of heat. He might be out, whether he deserves to be or not. But I kind of understood what Shaq and Barkley said about Anthony Davis, which is, if you were building a team, let's say, for the next 3 years, so you can include guys like Durant and some other people, for the longest time in New Orleans, like, Anthony Davis would have been at or near the top of your list, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now, he's certainly capable of being that guy from time to time, but like he seems to have a little bit of I don't know what that word is, but it just doesn't seem to be there all the time. Like when you watch Giannis play, Giannis is a foot on the throat. I'm going to do whatever I can. I might miss 10 shots down the stretch, but I'm still taking them. And Anthony Davis seems to just disappear a lot.
And I think, you always find that on a team with a really dominant player that you can sit back and let him do his thing. You are willing to take that back seat. And I think after a time, you lose your aggressiveness and you lose your own identity.
Because, what the Lakers need right now is for Anthony Davis to be a top 5 NBA player.
Oh, yeah, absolutely they do. It's exactly what they need.
Because he's the one guy I think they were counting on to be that down the stretch. Is LeBron, he's 39, I think, right now. And, Russ is Russ. But, I feel like they were sort of thinking this would have been, where LeBron sort of phased out Dwayne Wade in Miami. This would sort of be, Anthony Davis, at least, in all ways other than probably, perception to the general public at large. This would be him sort of taking over. And it just never really happened. I don't know.
Hard to say, but it makes sense. That you need, he's your future, and you need him to start being like he's your future rather than a complementary piece.
And you need, when people are arguing whether you would take Durant or Giannis in that conversation, you need at least one guy in the room being like, don't be sleeping on AD. As opposed to, he's been sort of surpassed by guys like Luka and other people. And,
AD's never played with the passion, though. Like, when you see Giannis is out there, his heart and soul is committed to whatever he's doing.
Yeah.
And I don't see that. I've never seen it with AD. I've seen him dominate games, but I would never say that he was the heart and soul.
No. And again, you don't want to harp on numbers or too much on numbers, but he's a guy that should be putting up sort of eye pop. given his size, his ability, he should be pooping those numbers. And it's not that he's not playing all-star level basketball. You just feel like he's capable of being, like I said, when you're having your discussion of who's the best player in the league, I think if you asked everybody 4 or 5 years ago, Anthony Davis would have been, in that on that list. And he's not.
He's not living up to expectations.
No. Well, you had a food moment.
Entertainment and food.
Yeah. You definitely had a food moment, right?
I had a food moment tonight at Trattoria dell'Arte in Manhattan on 7th Avenue. I posted, it's on Facebook and it's on Twitter if you want to look at it, but it's a veal parm that looked like a pizza. Pounded out really thin, really tender, with good base of sauce, good mozzarella, and a little bit of burrata mixed in. It was outstanding.
I suppose I had a food moment as well. Have you had a buttermilk drop before?
Buttermilk drop biscuit?
No, it's a donut-y sort of thing.
Oh yeah. It's like kind of crunchy.
It's kind of crunchy, then it's got a little bit of glaze on it.
Uh-huh.
There's a really good place down here called Buttermilk Drop, and they also have a restaurant next door that does buttermilk drop fried chicken and waffles. But
Uh-huh.
buttermilk drop, it's cash only, and this is always a weird one because until you've spent a lot of time in New Orleans, you don't realize how old everything looks inside.
Yeah.
And so sometimes the rundown old sometimes makes you feel like it's dirty, but it's probably the most rundown restaurant I'm comfortable eating food from.
Wow.
But it's rough looking inside. It's not, you're not going to walk in and be like, "Oh, wow." Cuz I mean even like, it's got an open kitchen concept. You can see in the open old kitchen, but it's like everything is covered in like powdered sugar and glaze, and it never looks like it's cleaned. But they're really good. So, I don't know what to say.
Have you tried the buttermilk drop chicken?
No, we've only gotten the buttermilk drops.
Okay.
We have not gone next door for the chicken yet.
Well, I've got a lot of places on my list this week while I'm in New York. And tomorrow night we're going to Spark Steakhouse, which I've talked about before. We're going there tomorrow night. On Goldbelly, I've ordered donuts from the Donut Pub before,
Yeah.
so I'm actually going to go to the Donut Pub
Oh,
and get
nice.
the jelly donuts live and in person.
Well, I'm officially in on Yellowstone. I'm a season and a half in.
Yeah, I need to start it. I've just heard so many great things about it.
It's it's sort of like it's not the level of quality of a Sopranos.
You know what somebody compared it to?
Ozark.
If you No, a cross between Game of Thrones and The Sopranos.
I think that's a little bit high praise.
Okay.
It's a very enjoyable show. It's definitely a little bit. I feel like it's closer to if Game of Thrones or no if Sopranos and Sons of Anarchy had a baby, way more so than Game of Thrones.
Okay.
Because it occasionally borders on that. Because Sons of Anarchy, the first season was a very Shakespearean, Oedipal sort of, am I going to take over for my father, the father sort of place? Is he ready to move out? Am I ready to move? That kind of thing. But it kept everything pretty grounded. Where if somebody was murdered, it was a big deal, and then it kind of got out of control where people were just shooting people constantly. And I think Yellowstone sort of teeters that line of going, from a nice serious drama to a little bit silly from time to time. But it is really well acted. Terrell Sheridan's a very talented showrunner, writer, creator. Um, you get to learn a little bit more Native American history than I think most people would probably expect in a show like Yellowstone.
Okay.
But for like a TV drama with some murdery stakes involved and politics and ethics, I found it quite enjoyable.
Well, I'm also going to have another entertainment moment this week. I'm going to go to movie theater for the first time since 2019.
Oh wow,
And I'm going to go see Nightmare Alley.
which looks very good.
I'm excited about seeing that.
And then It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is back, and it's weird because right now Curb Your Enthusiasm is back, and It's Always Sunny is back, and they're two of my favorite sitcoms. But I feel like they both sort of reached that point where they're both still things I really enjoy, but they're never going to quite be at their peak. But they're still enjoyable shows.
Okay.
I know The Simpsons has been on for I feel like my entire life, as they're in season 30 something at this point. But when you watch like having Disney Plus, you watch The Simpsons. Like there was that rough couple of years where they were getting their start, and then through seasons like 4 through 12 ish, and that might be expanding a little more than some people do. But those were like just Michael Jordan at his peak seasons. They had the best writing staff. It was all really sharp, and then after a certain point, you just don't have the fastball anymore.
And that's true, unfortunately, for a lot of things.
And some of it is just familiarity, and that, you've been with these characters for so long, like you've seen them do just about everything, so it's kind of hard for them to, find new ground to cover. And I think, It's Always Sunny right now and Curb are way better than, season 25 to 35 of The Simpsons, but they still sort of feel like they sort of reached, their peak is over, and now you're sort of just enjoying the back nine with some friends, more so than like being blown away every week.
Well, they're good shows. People should check them out.
Yeah.
I've committed to go to the Fiesta Bowl to see Oklahoma State and Notre Dame. So I'll be doing that. That'll be my New Year's Day. And then next week is going to be our last show of the year, right, Jay? We're going to take a couple weeks off.
I think so.
We're going to take off Christmas and New Year's and then come back maybe around January 6th or 7th.
Yeah, we may record one other show to throw up somewhere during the holiday, but I'm going to talk to you about that offline too. So.
Okay.
But yeah.
But we'll be back next week and then plan on us taking off sometime over the holidays.
But we really appreciate your support and hope everybody's, having an awesome holiday as it starts to wind down.
Yes. Hope everybody has a good time with family and friends and embraces the end of 2021 and moves on to 2022. And hopefully, 2021 was better than 2020, but I'd love to see 2022 be better than 2021.
Ideally, yes. And society-wise, it'd be nice if we're moving in that direction every year.
Wouldn't it, though? All right, everyone. Well, have a good week. Take care.